All right, welcome into another Future Sox video interview. And my special guest today, as you can see right there, it is a man with many jobs, but one of his more notable jobs, the one we're focusing on today, is the voice of the Chicago White Sox, Jason Benetti. Thanks a lot for your time today, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, Clinton, great to see you. Wish it was at Mackey, but look, we take what we can get over Zoom, right?
Absolutely, we're doing what we can. We're at least glad sports are on their way back, and things are getting closer to where they were a year ago at this time or so. But it's been a wild year. But yeah, you said you're still in Chicago. You're heading up to spring training next Saturday night. First spring training game is Sunday, which is it's crazy to think that next Monday is March already. But but here we are, and I'm sure you're excited to get out of this weather and get out there a little bit.
Yeah, I keep looking out my window to see how much of it's melted. And it looks like maybe like 600 of the inches of snow have melted, but I think we're still at about 142. So yeah.
I think I saw yesterday on the news, or I don't know where it was, Twitter, that this has been the snowiest 3 weeks in Chicago since 1979 or something. That's
Yeah, I'm
absolutely.
out for that. I just don't like why do we have to have this? Have we not dealt with enough this year? It's like last night as we're taping this, right? So we're taping this on Monday. Last night, Sunday night, it's like, okay, it's raining some. And then, you know what? No. It needs to snow a little bit. Yeah, like let's get a little snow in there, mix it in.
Let's get a couple more inches for just for fun. Why not? Yeah.
Yeah, like I want to not be a child of Mother Nature anymore. Like
I would agree.
can we have different natural parents here?
Well, let's get into the biggest names, I guess, prospect wise for the White Sox going in. And I've talked with some of the players, some other media people, and obviously the big three names are Andrew Vaughn, Michael Kopech, and Garrett Crochet. Michael Kopech, obviously he's been around the system, but he hasn't pitched in a couple years, so it's like they've added him this year, like a free agent type of deal. We saw what Garrett Crochet could do down the stretch last year, which, I mean, that's just absolute freak of nature. So a full season of him is going to be awesome. And then Andrew Vaughn, who deducing from the moves that they did or did not make, I mean, it looks like the DH spot is his to lose out of, or his to win out of spring training. If all goes well for him. Let's start with Andrew Vaughn. I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago, and he was at the alternate site last year and got some inter squad games in. What do you think of Andrew Vaughn? I mean, I know that's a loaded question, but what do you think of Andrew Vaughn?
So I go back to when he was drafted a couple of years ago. I talked to my college baseball friends, and I don't want to say here's a list of all the 30 friends of mine because I don't have 30 friends overall. But I talked to my college baseball friends, and one of the first thing that basically every one of them said was he is the most ready bat in the draft. And I know we're past that now, right? But I do believe that his level of consistency and his level of readiness plays into this moment here, right? So who knows what he would have done with a full minor league season last year and what numbers he would have put up. However, I think his confidence is there. I think his bat has always been prepared for a situation such as this one. And I do believe that the White Sox, after Encarnacion last year, must have said, hey, let's open this up at least to Andrew Vaughn. Now, Rick Hahn, in an interview with Len Casper and I, intimated the possibility of using the second catcher at points as the DH. That's something the Sox did last year with Grandal and McCann. But, it seems to me that Andrew Vaughn's path is there. And I know there are some people who say, he's untested and all that comes along with it. I think we found out last year in Major League Baseball that untested isn't the scarlet letter that we think it is. And Garrett Crochet is the perfect example of that. Like, he just would not have gotten that opportunity if not for the funky season that we had. And I wonder if out of all of this, organizations, not only the White Sox, but organizations might rethink the slow and steady wins the race path of minor league advancement. I think people's eyes may be trained differently after this regarding when to bring young talent to Major League Baseball.
It's funny you brought that up because yesterday I was listening to the score, and Mark Grody they're talking about, some of the prospects, and I was just thinking, like, you saw what Randy Arozarena did for the Rays last year, and just, I mean, for people that don't normally follow baseball, I mean, he came out of nowhere. And even for people that do follow baseball, he came out of nowhere and just took the world by storm and led the Rays, along with their pitching, but led the Rays to as far as they got. And I think that, some of these guys who in that upper echelon, like Spencer Torkelson's, the Andrew Vaughns, I mean, those kinds of guys that maybe throw Nick Madrigal in there, who a couple of years ago, who are in college, but they're ready to go right now. And I've always wondered, you see NBA players and football players, I know they're different sports, but, they're drafted, they're contributing right away, or at least in the first couple of weeks. And with baseball, that you go back to Brandon Finnegan with the Royals. I mean, that's the only name that I can think of that really stands out, who had an impact like Garrett Crochet did.
Yeah, it's interesting when you go back through the list of people who went straight to the major leagues, and one of them turned out to be a White Sox pitcher. And it's like, if people don't know the story, Jim Abbott went straight to the major leagues. Jim Abbott skipped the minor leagues, and Jim Abbott was born with one hand. I mean, John Olerud's on that list as well. And I don't think that's for everybody.
Right.
But I my first year, Clinton, in minor league baseball, affiliated ball, was 2006. I did an independent season in 2005 with the Windy City Thunderbolts near Chicago. But my first season in minor league ball was 06, and I did about 10 years of minor league baseball. And one of the things that struck me was the teaching in minor league baseball. Like if you read books like The Talent Code or some of the Gladwell stuff, but like the Talent Code specifically, and a book called Mindset that's mentioned in the Talent Code, I think specific focused practice is not what people got in minor league baseball in previous years. It was like, okay, go take BP and then see what you do tonight. And then a roving instructor would show up, and that'd be the end of the line in terms of teaching. And guys slipped through the cracks. I remember Frank Herman, who used to pitch for the Indians. He was a Harvard alum. Frank Herman told me in 2007, we were in Kinston, North Carolina. He was pitching against my team, the Salem Avalanche. And we had a fairly long conversation about sometimes how he felt like they didn't even care about him because he was a 30-something round draft pick. And I think that's changing for the better in baseball. I know people are critics in some realms, and rightfully so, of the new minor league baseball setup. But I do think the gap now between teaching in the majors and teaching in the minors, and information gathering in the minors and the majors, is closing together. I think there's less of a gap, which to me means that the ascent of the top prospects might be even faster and with better reason, because you're doing more specific learning in the minors instead of saying like, go get him, kid. And then if he doesn't do it, it's like kind of his fault. So to me, I think we're going to see more of that, like rapid fire ascent to the majors, even with, obviously there's the counterbalance of service time and all that comes along with it. But I would bet you those rules change with the new collective bargaining agreement too.
Two things real quick, and then we'll move to Michael Kopech. I think, one of those things that you mentioned, like let's say that an Andrew Vaughn type of guy does do that. Another thing to think about is kind of like, in football, when you've got a court, like you go back to Russell Wilson in his early years, he was on that rookie contract and they were able to put money elsewhere. And that's kind of the same idea with, if you get Andrew Vaughn, who hits 20 home runs out of the DH spot, you save so much money as opposed to going to get a Nelson Cruz, and you've got that extra money to spend somewhere else.
Yeah, it's a value bonus. And I actually think it's better for baseball if younger players are better younger. Right. Like, I mean, you think about what it does to excite a fan base to have young talent infused. Like, we've seen it with the White Sox. To know that you're going to go out and for years see Luis Robert and Yoan Moncada and Tim Anderson and that whole group, that's the way you protect against the free agency era of people in and out of your uniform. Like, this is the way that you get people interested for a long time. Like, I became a Sox fan because of Robin and Frank and Ozzie and One Dog in center, and Joey Cora and those guys like Ron Karkovice, like that. But the pitching staff too, like Blackjack, Alex Fernandez, Wilson Alvarez, like that was a core for some years. And you know, if not for the Blue Jays in the early 90s, who knows? But I think that's the way you make sure people are interested long term, because and you probably have a better shot at winning, because I've heard this a lot in the White Sox clubhouse when we could go in there more freely. But this is a group of young talent that wants to do this together. And I think when that sort of fractures because of the free agency grab and go situation, you lose a little bit of that atmosphere and you get more of the business talk.
Let's move on to Michael Kopech, a guy who back in 2018, I saw him make several starts down in Charlotte and got to talk to him after games and stuff. First thing that obviously stood out to me was a very, very smart, intelligent pitcher. Some guys, they just go out there and do whatever. But, in post games, it was this pitch in this situation. I knew I should have done this. And, not every pitcher has that. So it's great to see him back out there. I mean, we all know he's got a world of talent. We also know what he's had to deal with the last 18 months, whatever it's been. What can you tell us about Kopech right now, and kind of what are your thoughts on him going into this season?
Without talking to him specifically about what was going on in his mind and what challenges he faced, I do think just the broad idea of sometimes you have to leave it to reappreciate it, and sometimes you have to leave it, not even reappreciate it, but like file it in your brain in the most productive way. He was so, you've talked to him. He was so baseball driven. Like he was defined by baseball and what it could do for him, but also like, I remember asking him years ago, how hard can a human throw a baseball? And he was like, we don't even know yet. And you got the feeling with that answer that he wanted to be the guy who was essentially the first man on the moon, but with miles per hour. Yeah. Like, and he had the physical gifts to provide that. And so I think when you become sort of the wunderkind, when you show up and all of that crashes in on you, sometimes you have to leave that in order to come back and see it. So I'm happy for Michael, and I'm hopeful that Michael gets what he wants out of baseball, and that, Sox fans get to see him do what he does, because, there are a lot of talented people, but not everybody has that special intensity about improvement. And sometimes that can corrode you from the inside and make life very difficult. But his level of engagement, his level of throw myself through a wall to throw this baseball through a wall, is something that I think is special. And I think him harnessing that would be a very analogous story to what we saw from Lucas Giolito a couple of years ago. Lucas and that reclamation of who he was, I think that could be here again in a different fashion with Michael.
Do you think that, the White Sox maybe didn't go out and bring it, maybe not Trevor Bauer, but maybe a Marcus Stroman type of guy, or one of the second tier pitchers, because they think that with Cease, Lopez, Rodon, and Kopech, they can count on two of those four guys to round out the rotation? And do you think that's kind of why, or what were your thoughts on that?
The more I talk to people, and I'm fortunate with ESPN to talk to people from other organizations as well, the more I talk to people from around baseball, the more I realize that sometimes the best laid plans get thwarted by somebody wants to go here or somebody wants to go there. So I don't really love speculating on like what the plan might have been, because this is what the Sox have, but the plan might have been go get one or two or whomever, right? Like whoever that might be. And knowing how many plans get scrubbed by individual decisions, or, hey, they chose somebody else. Like, I think the Sox ideally I think every team has other things in mind than where they land right at the end of February. Like I really
wants, yeah,
that's true. And that's not that. I know that sounds like a defense of the White Sox. That like,
no, I mean, it's true.
That's not what I mean to say, because I do think like The Sox wanted to get Yasmani Grandal last year, and they went boom, and they got him, right? So that happened. And then the things that don't happen, we don't hear about. So I think if the Sox weren't at least somewhat comfortable with the progress or maybe what Ethan Katz can bring to some of these guys, I think they would have gone even harder at X. But I don't know what their aims were necessarily. I do know agents get inundated, GMs get inundated by agents. Like it is a nonstop process. And again, like obviously the Sox could help themselves with another starting pitcher. There's somebody who you could have that reliability of a 4, but I think that goes for a lot of teams in Major League Baseball that could use another one of those guys.
Let's go to Garrett Crochet. We saw, what he could do last year down the stretch, and then, thankfully the injury isn't flowing into this year, and he's going to be ready to go. Does he? I mean, I know the obvious comp, but do you think of anyone else when you see Crochet? I mean, obviously every White Sox fan immediately thinks of Chris Sale, but they're different guys and different pitchers. But is there anyone that Crochet kind of reminds you of, or I mean, what do you think?
I obviously not the same mechanics, right? But, and I'm a pop culture guy, I tend to think of Garrett Crochet as like Randy Johnson, but specifically from Little Big League movie.
Okay.
Because there's that one time where like, it's like, oh, Randy Johnson's going to pitch, but he's pitching out of the bullpen. And you're like, dun, dun, dun. So Garrett Crochet comes in, and I was just amazed at how strike throwing he was last year. And so, yeah, I mean, the Sale comparisons obviously start in the bullpen, and then who knows where he ends up. But I feel very secret weaponish about Garrett Crochet. I kind of like the shroud of mystery of where will he be and where will he end up and how do you best deploy him, because I do think he's sort of stealth bomber-ish in that you can bring him into a game under the cover of darkness. People don't know if it's going to be the 6th or the 9th or the 3rd or whoever knows, and he can provide you missiles.
I think you look at Crochet, but then you also look at what Matt Foster did, what Cody Hoyer did. I mean, two guys. The average White Sox fan had no idea who those guys were coming into the season. And first of all, that's the beauty of baseball. I mean, you've got there's so many talented guys that they get that one break, boom, there they are. They take advantage of it and they're there to stay, like those two guys are. That back into that bullpen is it's pretty special.
Yeah, and it's also the fragility of opportunity. Yeah. Like you show up, you throw twice, and it looks really good because who knows, like you just had it that day. And then suddenly that's the starting point for the franchise for you for the rest of the season. And then you have a situation where like you're Jonathan Stever and you come out and you can't throw strikes immediately, but you have a live arm. Like clearly Jonathan Stever's got stuff. And then people think of you in a certain way, right? So it is a very the game goes over 162, but you still have like a fragile first impression. And I think that's really interesting. I think those guys came at the right time for the Sox, Foster and Hoyer. And the one thing they did is they threw strikes, man. Like they came in, they looked undaunted, first of all. And I do believe, and I was talking to Dockich about this in a basketball game recently, like he thinks basketball is just better than it has ever been. And that flies in the face of the age group that he lives in, right? He's supposed to say, I think baseball, we're getting these almost bionically trained young men coming into the game because they can go anywhere for teaching and learning as of like age 12. Like you can go on Pitching Ninja's page and be like, okay, how does Marcus Stroman do it? He's going to slow it down for me. Or you have teachers even locally who are using advanced information. So I just think it's going to get better and better. People are going to be more and more prepared for being in Major League Baseball, which I think is awesome for the game. But I think we did see that shift. And I think seismically last year with the White Sox, especially in the bullpen, like guys showed up and they were ready to go. I don't think it has much to do with the lack of fans, although adrenaline is a funny drug. I do believe it's that people are just more prepared nowadays to go do what they do.
We didn't even mention Zach Birdie. You've got Jimmy Lambert, you've got Bernardo Flores, who pitched last year, and then the guy who I think is as good as any of these guys once he gets a chance, and that's Tyler Johnson. I mean, they've got so many young arms, and that's people talk about the lack of depth in the Sox system, and I think that would have been different if there would have been a season last year. Some of these guys, you would have been able to see them, and I think the tune about the system as a whole would be a little bit different.
I think so too. And I think what you can't game out a minor league season. There are always guys. Every season that I had in the minors, there was always a guy who, after a month and a half, the organization, whether it's the Astros, the Nationals, who I was in the minors with, they'd be like, man, we just cannot stop him from getting promoted. Like we have to give him the shot. And I love that about the minor league baseball season. I really, truly do. And I missed it last year because it's fun to just flip on a game and say, like, you know what? This dude is like, there's always a Daniel Palka around. And he's, he obviously, like, he was a supernova and then he flamed out quickly and now he's in Korea. But we love him for that year that he put together. And without a minor league season and without the opportunity to have those at-bats in front of people, I doubt that ever would have happened. And I think we all can say with a smile on our face and like a fake story about the McDonald's All-American game, we're better for knowing Daniel Palka.
I think Gavin Sheets has a chance to do that this year.
I agree. He would, talking to Gavin, like Gavin's no dummy. I talked to Gavin for the Dash hot stove banquet.
Yeah, I saw that.
Like the way he was talking about the outfield and his level of comfort with discussing it and like grab a glove, go do it. Like, I think he's a pretty dedicated worker. And I think he is seeing gaps and he's saying, get me in a place where I can provide. And not everybody does that when they're asked to make a position change. They really, like, we can all put a happy face on it. I've seen enough guys in the minors who are like, F this. I'm not doing that with my full heart. I almost want to be bad at it so they have to put me back at my other position. But I think now with the level of teaching that people can get, I'm a big Gavin Sheets guy, and I think I would not be surprised if he contributed this year.
One more question, then I kind of ask you like a broad question and let you go. So the other kind of thing that White Sox fans really, first of all, it's a beautiful thing when you can talk about one position or maybe one that needs an upgrade, and obviously that was right field. Just for whatever reason, Nomar it wasn't there last year, whatever. And George Springer, Michael Brantley, and the list goes on and on. And they did bring in Adam Eaton, of course, but they also signed Cespedes. And then you've got Luis Gonzalez, you've got Blake Rutherford, you throw Gavin Sheets in the mix, who's now out there in the outfield. You've got Mike Adolfo, who, once again, a guy that, in my opinion, if he was healthy, I don't think there would have been a right field discussion going into this season. Do you think there's someone that can take a step? I mean, we mentioned Gavin, but what do you think?
Yeah, I've always thought that Mike Adolfo is one of those guys you walk up to him and you watch BP and you say, he'll be in the majors. I mean, immediately from meeting him a couple of years ago in spring training and then watching him comport himself in batting practice, there's something different about that physical specimen that doesn't always end up in the majors. But there's something about him that when he got hurt and he had to have the Tommy John surgery that year, I was like, man, that's really tough, because there was an opportunity to rise there that I don't think is the same opportunity right now, just because of the amount of people. And after a couple of years, maybe people just fall out of memory, or with the injury, you're just not the same type of player. But I still think that Mike Adolfo is the kind of guy who could show up and you could see just go on a run of about 3 weeks, like Carlos Delgado sort of did when he showed up in the major leagues. I mean, he's such a physical specimen. He's such a powerful guy. I think that's still available there. But Blake Rutherford has never really put together the season that I think the Sox expected when he came over. He's a very laid back guy. but he's a skilled baseball talent. And I thought Blake Rutherford's ascent would be quicker in the minor leagues in years past. So frankly, I hope that the schedule that our buddy Tommy Viola sent out for Charlotte sticks, because I think there's going to be some interesting jockeying going on in Double-A and especially Triple-A this year in the outfield. Because again, like the opening day roster gets so much pub, but you're going to rifle through a couple more dozen guys by the end of the season. And if heaven forbid something happens injury wise in the outfield, there is going to be opportunity, and there are those guys waiting in the wings. And to me, I think Gavin Sheets is the guy that the Sox might turn to more quickly. But I do think I've always thought this about Mike Rodolfo, that if he ended up being healthy again, he could be sort of an outsized component based on what people expect. But again, I personally haven't seen these guys play for a couple of years now. And so the evaluation tool, I think, has been put in the blender for every major league team. And I'm super interested to see what qualifies as promotable now after a season without minor league baseball.
Last thing I'll let you run, Jason. So this is it's interesting. I could ask you, I thought about asking you your favorite call of basketball and baseball of all time, but that'll take forever. So going back to just last season, what was your favorite moment of the 2020 White Sox season?
Who is this the no hitter category?
Yes.
Okay.
Obviously the no hitter is number one, but
number one, and it's number two, and it's number three.
yes.
Favorite moment from last season. To me, the thing that hit me hardest was the Sox clinching the playoff spot on that Sunday afternoon. That to me was like, was it all the days run together? It was an afternoon game. Maybe it was a Thursday. I don't know. But the Sox clinching, like, and not having fans in the ballpark that afternoon, it hit me pretty hard that there are so many people who would give everything to be here for that moment. And from everything I saw, even in like March and April, when people were sending me notes that I was doing on Twitter and sending to one another, the level of connectivity between Sox fans and how much the Sox are something that people do together and love together. And it reminds them of their aunt or uncle or mom or dad or nephew or grandson or granddaughter. I was just struck by how emotional that day was for so many people. And I couldn't see it, but I knew it, that it had been so long since the Sox made the postseason. So to me, that hit me pretty hard as it was happening. And I thought it was a really cool day against the Twins that day. Now that I think about it, I think it was a Thursday afternoon. It was a getaway day, but that moment struck me pretty intensely.
All right, Jason, I appreciate your time today. I know you still got some college basketball season to finish up. It's gonna be a fun one without the without fans and the tournament. It's gonna be, playing field is wide open. I know Gonzaga and Baylor are up there, but you mentioned to me before that you think that maybe not one of those two teams is going to win it all this year.
Somebody needs to get the Big Ten a title. It's been way too long. And I think based on the depth of the league, one of those teams at the top has got, like, I thought Illinois was going to make a run last year.
Right.
And the tournament didn't happen. I thought Illinois was really well equipped, and now all these guys are older. So to me, I think Illinois is a really scary team. Iowa, obviously, Ohio State, Michigan. Like, somebody go get the Big Ten a title.
All right, Jason, thank you very much. Safe travels out to Arizona, and look forward to doing this again. And hopefully everyone stays healthy and we get ourselves a full baseball season.
Let's do it, Clinton. Thank you as always, and we'll talk soon.
Voice of the Chicago White Sox, Jason Benetti here on a Future Sox podcast interview.